No detours, no distractions. Just bold ideas and real talk. This is Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez.
Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to drive it home. Joining me in studio is guest co-host Dan Schaefer. Dan, we seem to have a couple of few segments of silence. I want to encourage folks to meditate. I feel like if we're going to have moments of silence, I should at least do a little of this. We should do a little music. Maybe we should do some meditation music for folks. If we're going to have a moment of silence, it should at least because it was just silence and you're just left alone with your thoughts.
I don't know how you work that board.
I don't. Clearly not well. According to today's show, I'm not doing it well, which is embarrassing when we have wonderful guests like our friends in studio. We have in studio with us Joel Bleifuss. I said it right. I said it right off the air. Everyone marked that I said it wrong. And then I made fun of his name, Bleifuss. I said Bleifuss correctly off the air. That's why you know what? I'm gonna meditate on it for a minute. That's Joel Bleifuss and Justin Perkins of Barn Raiser, an independent source for rural and small town news. Thank you so much for both of you joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be back.
So Joel, tell me how you got started with Barn Raiser.
Well, I used to work at a magazine called In These Times, and
yes.
I was the editor and publisher there. But I started a publication or sort of part of the magazine called Rural America in These Times.
Yeah, I think our friend Rick Perlstein wrote for In These Times.
Yes, of course.
Excellent. And so, what was the impetus for beginning?
Well, I'm from a small town in Missouri on the edge of the Ozarks, and so I just saw how my county has changed over the years and how it's been taken over by sort of Christian nationalists and far-right Republicans, and I think that I just had an interest in rural culture and rural people, and I thought they needed a good media.
I read the book Strangers in Their Own Land, which kind of gives a little bit of insight about the elements that can lend itself to, I don't want to say manipulation, but it's hard, especially what we saw with Governor Kehoe repealing this legislation, where the majority of people who voted in November said they wanted to have paid sick leave, and he's like, screw 1.7 million people who voted for something. Like, how do you pace yourself with everything that has changed in having been a publisher of In These Times and wanting to call attention with Barn Raiser?
Well, I think you have to. It's important to realize that people in rural America are not the sort of right-wing masses that many urban people think they are. You look at how in Nebraska, for example, where Justin's from, folks voted to keep public education and keep sort of the Christian nationalists out of their public education system. And Missouri, the votes there during the last election, which were progressive on the referendum. So I think that shows that that people are receptive to a progressive message in rural America, and that's what we're trying to provide.
Oh, Justin. So you're from Nebraska?
Yeah, from Nebraska, outside of Omaha, a small town called Papillion.
I have been to Papillion. I've performed in Kearney. But it's nowhere near that. It's like in the middle of the state. I know. Yeah. I know it's a long ways from there. I'm just trying to think of the places in Nebraska I performed. And to your point, like I've been doing stand-up comedy for 30 years, and a lot of it was in small towns. And everyone that I met were incredibly wonderful people. And I was traveling long before Donald Trump came down that slithered down the escalator. Sorry, it's probably not the kind of language that you use. But tell me a little bit about what your experience is in watching this sort of, we call it a cult, but the stranglehold that and to your point, Josh, about how we think that rural people are all MAGA. How do you shake loose both groups, I guess, from those ideas?
Yeah, I think, having grown up in Nebraska, I think especially in Nebraska, there's this strong identity around a sort of independent mindset, a sort of independence that runs deep in the land and in the culture there. I think that definitely gives a unique perspective to rural folks, but at the same time, that's sort of complemented with this other culture of interdependence that you rely on your neighbor for very critical needs and goods, and especially in rural areas. So I think there's a way in which that sort of mix of sort of independence and interdependence shapes rural realities differently. And I think lends itself to certain forms of collective mindsets,
Sure.
And can also lend itself to sort of forms of kind of individualism as well. So I think it's understanding sort of those things at play. But.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's hard for people in places like Chicago because, we kind of base a lot of our ideas now on social media. And Joel, that has to have changed so much throughout your career. I mean, was there a moment when you went, oh, this is getting away from us? Our ability to even communicate with each other is being dictated by the hate, like both sides banging away at the keyboard.
Yeah, I think that's been increasingly a concern, and that was one of the impetus for Barnraiser, because I don't think you can write off a whole segment of the population because you disagree with them, but you need to figure out where you can have sort of common cause and without, foregoing your values and what you believe. But I think one way to do about that in the world context is to talk about people's rights to live their own lives and to not have the government be interfering in their choices.
Yeah.
Well, and Dan, I was going to say, you had a conversation with somebody that about trying to find common ground.
I think it's. I always say Chicago is. It's a city of neighborhoods, right? And you always have neighbors, and I will do anything for my neighbors, and they would do anything for me, and. It doesn't matter like what is happening. It's just like you just need to be a helping hand, and that's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter what your demographic is or what your lifestyle is or just a helping hand. And I think that to me, I grew up in Chicago, and that's what Chicago is to me. Like if somebody somebody asks for help, you help. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what, right? If your basement is flooding or if it's a blizzard and you got to snow blow the sidewalk, you just help. And that's just the way that it is. It doesn't matter. And that's kind of what I think that the perspective needs to be across all experiences of life or lifestyle. That's just me. That's how I operate. That's just it. Yeah.
Yeah, going back to your reference to strangers in their own lands too, I think a lot of folks in rural America too feel left behind by the politics and that have gone on, and especially I think looking back on 2016 to 2020, I think just the idea that you would call a sort of a segment of voters a basket of deplorables, as Hillary Clinton did, I think really sent a message that as the sort of consolidation of kind of democratic strongholds moved to urban areas, became wealthier, and rural areas got increasingly left behind. I mean, there's a whole history of there with NAFTA and the sort of deindustrialization, but I think there's this real sense that in a lot of ways rural areas have been left behind, and people feel that, and that's either sort of exploited for gain by sort of the right, or it's sort of seen as this sort of liberal-minded said that we're going to come in and do good for you and tell you what's good for you, and that's that.
And the condescending tone of what people seem to have about Democrats. I have questions. We're going to continue our conversation because we must take a break. We're in studio with Joel Bleifuss and Justin. Right, that time was right. Was it close?
It was great.
It was great. Okay, I'll take great. By the way, it's not just you. I do it all the time. I psych myself out and then get everything completely wrong. That's Joel Bleifuss and Justin Perkins of Barnraiser, an independent source for rural and small town news. And I have a question about the basket of deplorables, and things have certainly escalated all over the place since then. Let's take a break here. And joining me in the studio is also guest co-host Dan Schaefer. You can find Tuesday with Josie wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you for joining us.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
I have officially been behind the microphone for 6 years here at WCPT, and I really want to thank you. It has been a new lease on life. Parts of my brain that were asleep woke up again to talk politics with you.
Joan Esposito, weekday afternoons 2 to 5 on WCPT 820.
A tree can be a warrior, battling global challenges with greater courage. A tree can be a solution, cleaning our air, supporting our communities, and protecting our wildlife. A tree can be noble, growing hope in every corner of the world. That's why now is the time for trees. Millions of trees. Join our planting movement at arborday.org.
Are you looking for more in this world? Are you ready for something bigger? Then we are looking for you. The big-hearted, the bold, the messy and the gutsy. The teachers, the growers, the builders. The skilled, the sharers, the change makers. We need you. We are the Peace Corps. In more than 60 countries, we go all in and all out. We are volunteers, partners, communities, working together, living together, bringing our experience, passion, and joy to building a better world together. From tackling climate change in Mexico to keeping kids healthy in Kenya, from sustainable farming in the Philippines to education in Kosovo. We learn more, give more, share freely, and serve boldly. Are you ready to tackle the tough stuff? To go the distance to make a difference? Then we have a place where you belong. Join us at peacecorps.gov.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820. You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez.
Thank you for joining us as we continue to drive it home. Joining me in the studio is guest co-host Dan Schaefer, the host of Tuesdays with Josie, in memory of his grandmother, and their relationship. And so I would tune in and learn more about his family and his experiences. We also want to welcome back on the air with us is Joel Bleifuss and Justin Perkins of Barn Raiser, an independent source for rural and small town news. And we were talking before the break. Justin mentioned the moment when Hillary Clinton said they're a basket of deplorables. And I think that, was it Barack Obama who said they cling to their guns and Bibles was another thing that people... Here's my question is... At what point are Democrats then not supposed to react at all when we're called commies and baby killers and all the sort of back and forth, and so, we have to let that roll off of us? I don't know. It's hard, we're supposed to be nice, I guess, is what we're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
In some ways, I think there's a double standard at play. If you look at what the right and MAGA folks are allowed to say about people, and what the president himself has said about so many people.
That he hates us. Has just this week said he hates us.
Well, and when you ask a question that you don't agree with, you get to say you're a terrible person,
right.
And that's not, no.
I'm just wondering. I'm just trying to figure out how.
And it's really sort of lowered the level of conversation. We asked our readers, and, do they feel safe expressing their views where they live? And 43% of our rural readers said they don't feel safe saying publicly what they think because of this political climate that is so poisonous.
Yeah.
And I think that progressive rural people feel very much sort of isolated and under the gun, and that's why Barn Raiser is one of our...
Yes.
Why we exist is to provide a progressive perspective on rural issues.
Yeah, I would imagine, because I was in rural Illinois. I went to do a show at a VFW, and I have pictures. I think I sent them to the FBI, but it was when we win on November 4th. Yes. It was about killing Democrats and on his property. And I mean, so why would progressives in rural areas want to share their thoughts? Anyway, I'm just plus they have a lot of guns, it seems.
But also we had a guest on when you bring me in to co-host in what was it, DeKalb or up near Rockford,
right?
And they were able to get officials elected with overwhelming majorities,
right?
Because rural America, people feel like it's just red. It's not.
No, exactly. That's what you guys are talking about.
I would actually say most of it is blue, but you just got to be able to vote, number one. But then that's the part. But it also gets into the point of this big, beautiful bill that they just passed, which is going to negatively impact rural America quite heavily in terms of hospitals and just general care. How does that play into people's, how are they going to vote moving forward? Or do they think that they even have a voice?
Well, it's very clever that the Medicaid cuts don't happen until 2028.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Sort of like they're trying to push that down the road.
Yeah.
But it's going to catch up with them, I'm sure.
Well, there was also already a clinic in Nebraska that already closed even ahead of the big BS bill, because I think a lot of these are going to hit before even the actual cuts, because they have to forecast what their spending is going to be like, what their staffing is going to be like. Because if the Medicaid dollars aren't coming in, there are 9 hospitals in Illinois that are vulnerable to being closed. And I guess this is what's so frustrating, is that people think that liberals are fighting because we want to protect fraud and deception and all these things. I really don't want these hospitals to close, Jordan. How do we get that across to people?
No, it is a hard thing, and I mean, definitely hard to predict how people will vote. But I think there is a very that narrative sticks, and it's an important one. I mean, of people wanting to protect against what's being called fraud, waste, and abuse. And I think at the root of it is. And Chloe Maxman at Dirt Road Organizing had sort of pointed this out to us, had sort of said that at the root of that people really do want these programs to survive, right. SNAP, Medicaid, food stamps, because they want it to work for the people who need it. But I think we'll have to see, because these institutions, from like rural hospitals to public schools to even like your USDA field office, they play like absolutely critical, essential roles in these rural communities, and rural communities will be some of the first communities impacted, because it will have a very concrete material impact on people's lives. And I mean, we've sort of heard different things from folks. Some folks have said that they're willing to take the cuts, to take the hurt, if it's going to root out the fraud and abuse and things like that. And I mean, to plenty of other folks in rural America too, it's just totally outrageous and unconscionable. But
right.
It is.
It's hard to communicate that, because it's the right seems to the right does manipulate through hate and fear, and that's hard to overcome. There's Don't Think of an Elephant. I don't know if you've read that book about the way conservatives communicate compared to Democrat. We're more maternal and sort of like want to care about people and things like that. So how is it with communicating with? I mean, is one of the things that like sort of demonstrate when something closes, this is because of the bill? Is it like drawing those lines, connecting the dots for folks?
It's that, and drawing like the historical parallels and understanding that, well, when NAFTA came in and all these towns, these small and factory towns in the Midwest lost their factories, with that went a lot of jobs.
Yes.
And you think of a hospital. Well, if a hospital leaves a community, that's going to affect whether another company wants to set up shop in that area, because it doesn't have that necessary service. And it's sort of a trickle-down thing that just gets worse and worse for rural.
And it might be like, if it's not a hospital, it might be like an urgent care or another private care facility that will not be covered by certain people's insurance, and then you have to pay way more money type thing. Yeah.
And what's going to happen with nursing homes? That's going to be a huge crisis with Medicaid. They're going to close all over the place.
93 in Illinois are vulnerable to closing, and
really,
that's predominantly in rural areas.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and one interesting thing as we've been covering rural America too, is looking at sort of antitrust movements that are sort of against monopolization in farming sector, nursing home, hospital industry. Rural people respond to that really well, because, I mean, if you really want to look at waste, fraud, and abuse, you should be looking into these insurance companies, these farming manufacturers. That I think that sort of narrative hasn't been totally captured by those, or fully understood on the left, that I think could be an effective way to sort of pivot on that.
Completely with that, yes.
Yeah. I think you're right. Well, and you said, so who said trickle down? I mean, because like that, essentially a lot of why we're here is because people were convinced that it was a better idea to break unions and, give these huge tax breaks from, what was it, 75% to 28% under Reagan. Yeah. And so, okay, that's actually the question I knew it was in there somewhere. As farmers are, whether it's because because cutting SNAP benefits, because they also benefit from that, right? That's a subsidy essentially for them. It's where the money, where not subsidy, but they're being paid for the produce to be given to kids in school or families. Isn't there a vulnerability for corporations to come in like Land O'Lakes did in Wisconsin, or to buy up huge? I mean, already there are investors just sitting on land all over the country because farmers can't afford it because they're losing workers.
And I mean, the farmers most hurt by a lot of the Trump cuts are the small farmers that were providing food to local schools and were sort of part of the farmers' market economy. And they were the ones that lost their guarantees under Trump. And then so many farmers revolted that they came in with this sort of rescue package because they want to keep that voter base. And
it's temporary.
So we're paying it, but that goes to mostly the largest farmers who are getting the great bulk of the.
You guys have a lot of work cut out for you, is all I'm saying. How do you pace yourself, Jordan? I'll start with you. With like getting, I mean, this is a monumental task to inform people, and you know, it's not your job to convince them, but to inform them, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. I mean, we talk about this just constantly every week on editorial meetings of what's our plan and how are we going to cover. I mean, one thing we're sort of aided by the fact, just as a very young nonprofit organization, we don't do breaking news, so we're not trying to be on top of every single thing. And I think at the same time, one of the main focus of our mission is looking at the organizers, the change makers, the leaders in these rural communities who are really trying to take charge and respond to these realities. So I think one of our main things we've been trying to focus on in our editorial covers is not just covering the outrageous things that are happening that are inevitably going to happen. Yeah, and it exhausts reporters, it exhausts readers, but I think we're really trying to cover how people are responding to it, and not shying away from the negative things, certainly, but how rural communities are responding, how, for instance, we covered this issue of school vouchers that, across Ohio, Texas, everywhere it's been, but in Texas especially, there's been this movement of Democrats, Independents, Republicans to protect your public schools, because those are the cornerstones of your rural community. You don't have a private school around the.
And see how their football teams are, those charter schools. I mean, that's the thing. I only have about 20 seconds here, Joel. But dude, this is a lot. How do you pace yourself?
Well, I think it's just I'm very hopeful just looking at the way that people are coming together in rural America to organize and to reach out to their neighbors. And the whole conversation is changing nationally, I think, and people are understanding that that the rural areas of the country have to be paid attention to, and they can't be written off. And if they are written off, we're going to just get further and further into this sort of scary direction we're already going.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for the work that you do. It's barnraisingmedia.com. Everybody support the work that they're doing. Subscribe, read their work, participate. Barnraisingmedia.com. We've been talking to Joe Bleifuss and Justin Perkins, and we have to run, Dan. I'm super late. Thank you to Pride Coffee Roasters. I didn't say, and then Solar and Monaco Brewing Company. Thank you, Lady B. Love you all. Have a great night, everybody.